Welcome everybody to another episode of My Two Cents. I'm Bob Wire. Thank you for taking the time out to spend your moments with me. I know how precious our time are, right? Time is a commodity that can't be retrieved or properly paid for. So anytime a person take the moment out to spend it with me, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you have the ability to, which I hope you do, can you please like, subscribe, share? It's all about getting the algorithm out there, as far as I'm told. But I kind of want to get right down to it. I'm going to be doing a reaction, I guess, to a reaction video. And the initial video is about a young brother on YouTube named Antonio. He's got a channel called Antonio Speaks. Young black brother. I love what he's doing. I love his message. He's out there pumping out, good information for the youth. And I love seeing that young black brothers out there pushing the conversation forward. Good conversation and educating themselves. So if you can, definitely go to his channel and subscribe to Antonio Speaks. But he's doing this particular reaction to a reaction is by another guy who I don't know very well. His name is Absjorn. You could probably see it on the screen. He's doing a reaction to what Antonio apparently had to say about Christianity. And I'm sure it's going to be kind of a very galvanizing conversation, to say the least, because we know particularly about the conversation of Christianity when it comes to the black community, how that could be a severe spot that if you say things in contrary to how most of us feel about it, black folks, that it could become a contentious relationship, In those areas, unfortunately, a lot of us think that we're a monolith when it comes to that, And let's jump into the video. Let's see what's being said here.
Just before this video gets going, I do want to mention that I have a Discord server. Join if you want to suggest new video ideas or come hang out with us. And if you like what you see here today, you'll like pretty much everything else on my channel, so why not subscribe? Thanks. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video here on the channel. It's the first video I'm making after crossing such a milestone on YouTube. I've been saying this before in other videos, but thank you guys so much for your support. Hitting 10,000 is something that I've been wanting to do for a while now, so I'm appreciative. But man, don't I have a video for you guys. This video by Antonio Speaks came across my feed a couple of days ago, and it's titled The Black Christian Problem. For those of you who don't know, and actually some of you who are on the channel might already know this, but I myself am a black Christian, so believe it or not, I was compelled to click on this video and just really find out what the problem is with this side of the Christian community. And I'm just going to spoil the video for you right now. It doesn't do too good of a job at highlighting any of the issues with this side of the Christian community. Most likely this is because it's coming from somebody who doesn't know the book or the faith like an actual person from that religion would. Antonio is somebody who is very pro-black, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but where it starts to become a problem in my eyes is when you become so pro-black that you start to tear other people in the black community down who don't want to wear their hair a certain way, who want to speak clearly and enunciate their words and not take part in certain aspects.
You see right there, he's building a straw man argument, which is bullshit. I'm sure Antonio is not getting at any brother or sister that wants to pronounce their words or enunciate, as he said, correctly or anything like that. Antonio himself speaks awfully well, so he's coined himself a black nerd, if anything. So he's not getting at you for the way your hair is, or the way you speak. So right there, he's creating a narrative that doesn't exist, and I just want to point that out. So be aware. Already, this is kind of starting off a little fishy right there. He's creating this whole bullshit narrative. This guy might be. This is his feeble attempt at being a Christian apologist, if you ask me. But let's continue.
Have become attributed to black culture, which really shouldn't have. But let's see what the black Christian problem really is.
Now, this might be one of my most controversial videos, but I gotta keep it 100. Religions, but especially Christianity, is holding the black community back. Now, black people in America are some of the most devoted Christians in the whole entire world. Just Christianity in general in the church, it's a part of black culture. And to just give my personal stance on things, I'm not a Christian. I believe in a higher power, but I don't think it's something that we can perceive. It's not a man, it's not a woman, it's not I just can't explain it. And I will say this, I don't knock anybody that is a Christian, especially our ancestors. I mean, there had to be a God or a higher power when the devil was so real. Slavery in America is downplayed in my opinion. In schools, they really only teach you about 10% of what was really going on. I mean, 400 years of back-to-back brutal, non-stop working, you would want to believe that it's something after you die. And then even after slavery, it was still not good for us. And this is where my first question comes in about Christianity. Why did God allow slavery for black people?
I mean, you could ask the same thing for literally every other race, because slavery isn't tied to a specific race. It's literally been a thing since before race was even a concept in people's minds. I also want you to understand something too about Christianity.
Once again, he's just trying to slide the narrative. He's trying to say, oh, there have been many people that were enslaved. So what does that mean? Rather than tackling the problem head on, you have to be honest with yourself that if you are a Christian, you have to, and you believe in the Bible, you have to understand that the Bible was a book that promoted slavery. That's dims as facts. And it doesn't matter whether you like that being said or not. And if you don't believe it, all you have to do is read it. I challenge you, find one scripture in here where it spoke about that God wasn't okay with slavery. There are many scriptures in there that's saying typically how you should deal with your slaves, how you should discipline them. And then I know people are going to go on and say, oh, well, there were different types of slavery or whatever. You know, there were some slavery where people put themselves to pay off debts and things like that. So it was understandable. They received their freedom at time. Yeah, that had to do if the Israelites were enslaving fellow Israelites, right? But it was a whole other set of rules when it came to the foreigners, outsiders, you know what I'm saying, with them working or remaining slaves forever, for their entire lives, right? And then there were rules also that if you married while you were a slave, you know what I'm saying, that when you, like a woman or whatever, that woman may have been the property of the slave owner. So that if you wanted to leave and you had children with that woman, you couldn't just, when you received your, let's say 7 years, when you received your 7 years and you did your time, so to speak, and you were a freed man, that you could leave, but now you're going to be leaving behind your wife and your children. And then so a lot of times they in turn indebted themselves to the slave master for life, and they would actually be taken out in front of the masses and be branded, you know, in order to stay so that they don't abandon their family. So there's a lot of things like that that's going on in the Bible, and if you don't believe it, you know, just look it up. I'm not claiming to be a biblical scholar, but these are things that are just simply facts. And if you want to do it on a very small basis, right, let's look at it from a small context. Slavery, if you're a sound-minded individual, I think you would admit that that's one of the worst atrocities that took place, right? One of the worst things you could do to a person is to say that you are not in ownership of your own autonomy, right? You are beneath me and I control you, right? So show me anywhere in the Bible, in Genesis, in the Ten Commandments, where he I won't say trivialized, but he minimized a lot of things, a lot of his laws, just in 10 particular laws that he really wanted to ensure that people understood, that people really got it, right? Where in those 10 did it said anything in reference to you should not enslave people? Just take a time out and just look it up. Something as important as God not co-signing slavery, you would think that he would make it a onus to make sure he mentions it at least in the Ten Commandments, right? Because that's right there on the top. That, you know, so that there's no debate to be had. He mentioned it. It is not mentioned in the Ten Commandments for anybody that has read the Ten Commandments. And there's a follow-up to it. A lot of times people like this will like to go off and say, oh, okay, just because Antonio is claimed already at the beginning of this video that he wasn't a Christian, that all of a sudden he doesn't know anything about Christianity. He doesn't know anything about the Bible or anything like that. If there's one thing that I have noticed in my time, right, on this planet, is that I've watched a lot of different debates and stuff. I've read the Bible in its entirety quite a few times myself. And if there's anything that I notice, most extreme devoted Christians have never read the entire Bible. Most devoted Christians have not read half of the Bible. Okay? They have read certain little scriptures. And then they would, that little bit of knowledge that they got from reading a few scriptures, the Dunning-Kruger effect happens. They got a little piece of information and they started to act as if they're scholarly when it comes to the book, right? And that's absolute bullshit, right? Because that's not necessarily true. A lot of times there's a lot of scriptures inside the Bible that if you would say these scriptures to these Christians and say, what do you think about it? They would deny that something like that exists in the Bible. You know, but they'll be quick to turn around and say, like, at least I believe they will look at a guy like Antonio and say, you're not a Christian, so you really don't know the Bible or anything like that. So, and maybe if you knew the Bible, you would understand that that's not what that's intended or what that's meaning. So there's a lot of, contortionists going on when it comes to the truth, right? A lot of spinning and turning, trying to justify something that's the unjustifiable. But let's continue.
Christianity and the Bible. In addition to being a religious text, it's also a history book, recording wars, battles, and atrocities that have happened in the past, and even talk.
Oh, hold on. He just said that the Bible is also a history book. Okay. I call a cap on that. The Bible is not a history book. Not by any measure. You know, that's not even what the authors intended when the Bible was written. It's a book about a relationship with the Almighty, God, Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever you want to reference him as. That's what the Bible is it's about. It's not a historical book. It's not a history book as this guy is claiming. And I know some people say yes it is, because there are certain events that were mentioned in the Bible, so that deems it to be a historical book, right? Because it's speaking about true factual events that took place with certain individuals that were true, right? Okay, so then I pose this question to you, right? So there's a movie that came out many years ago. It's called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer, right? And if you look at the movie, there are a lot of factual things that took place in there. Abraham Lincoln, one, existing, him being the president, 16th president, true, and things that were going on during that time and era that Abraham Lincoln was living, right? All these things are in the movie, and these things are factual things. Now, the thing that is not factual was that makes this particular movie, and I think it was a book as well, fiction, is because he did not slay vampires, right? That's the big elephant in the room. He didn't slay any vampires. So that's why you could see, you can have a story that you write yourself and use a particular place or timepiece that actually took place, but you added your level of fiction to it. You can't now turn around and say that's a historical document. That's absolute nonsense. Okay? So for somebody to say that the Bible is a history book, that's extreme cap. Please do not accept that. That's bullshit. Let's continue.
About slavery. However, it never endorses any of these things. Remember, talking about something isn't the same thing as condoning it. I also want you to understand that we have free will, as seen in Joshua 24:15 or 1 Corinthians 10:13. This has been true for all of human history. We've always been able to do what we wanted to do.
That's call a cap on that again. I'm sorry, I got to stop because this cat is capping a lot. There's a lot of cappage going on. There's a lot of cappage. He said that there's free will. You would have to question if there is free will, right? Okay. There's a scripture in the Bible where it talked about how when Moses was trying to free the Israelites and whatnot from the Pharaoh, right? And God himself said that he hardened the heart of the Pharaoh, which made the Pharaoh continue not to release the Israelite slaves. So how is that free will? So the Pharaoh didn't have the opportunity to decide whether if he wanted to let them go or not. His heart was increasingly hardened by God. Where's the free will at? Okay. It spoke about that Judas was brought here. His mission in life pretty much was to cross Jesus, right? And be a traitor to him, right? That was his purpose. There was no other purpose for Judas other than that. So did Judas have the free will to say, you know what? I don't want to be a traitor to Jesus. So if that didn't happen, then Jesus wouldn't have got sacrificed, and then the prophecies wouldn't have been fulfilled, and then you couldn't call him the Son of God, right? Because he wouldn't have had been crucified, you know what I'm saying, at Calvary, and resurrected, right? So obviously you have to question, is this really free will? Do we really have free will? Okay, that's not true. That's cap. Let's continue.
Not going to stop us or get in the way. This is because having free will offers the most natural way for a human to choose God, to choose doing good over doing evil. Why would it be God's fault that somebody does something out of greed or selfish ambition or for personal gain?
Going to slavery, it's because we fell into things that was against God. Do you know that we practice things over there in Africa, the ancestors, as all y'all say?
See, it's simple Negroes like this that are extremely dangerous. You're talking with the tongue of your colonizer, your literal oppressor. And he's talking about the fact that in Africa, and typically a lot of us that are African Americans here that exist today, we came from West Africa, right, through transatlantic slave trade. And typically Christianity wasn't the main thing that was taught there. We practiced many other religions. There was worshiping of the ancestors and so forth, right? And which is now looked at as demonic and whatnot. So anything that's antithetical to the Christian movement is completely sinful in the eyes of God, so to speak, right? Right? You know what I'm saying? As far as that goes against Christianity. I'm sorry, just lost train of thought for a minute there. Man of a certain age. But so they teach people things like this and say, because we engaged into those particular practice is why we were forced into chattel slavery, right? And he is completely wrong for that. He is completely wrong. They have nothing to do with that. We were forced into chattel slavery because we were being exploited by our colonizers that came from Europe that wanted to be able to get people to do free labor. That's all that was. You want to add a story to it and say these were the reasons why. And if that's the case, right? Where's the free will at? Like, so let's think about it. Let's say that there was these parents that sat there and they decided to worship other gods or whatever the case may be. And their punishment was that they were going to be forced into slavery. Why could they not suffer the slavery? Why did their children and their children and their children suffer and endure the slavery as well? Where was their choice in the matter at? Where was their free will at? Because it's quite possible that they could have disagreed with what their parents was doing. But just because their parents did it is why they're suffering for it. And then I know people are going to want to revert back and say, oh yeah, well, we're dying because of the sins of Adam and Eve. Well, when you think about that in a nutshell, stop and critically think, which a lot of times Christians won't do. You know, they're allergic to it. Why would we be suffering all this time just because they ate from a particular tree that was put in their space, and God told Adam not to eat from it? And because he chose to eat from the tree of knowledge and obtained the wisdom of good and evil, that every generation forever until the return of Jesus should suffer and die, right? Like that's crazy in a nutshell, right? Like, let's be honest. And then you got to also stop and say, okay, well then, if that was the intentions and that was the plan, then what would have been the purpose of God saying that he ended up growing tired of humanity and wanted to hit the reset button and decided to flood the entire earth and pretty much start over? But then when he thought about it, he says, okay, well, I see Noah and his family and they're the only ones worth saving. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to flood everything and kind of hit the reset button. Why would he hit a reset button when he know initially that ultimately people were going to have to die and go through all of this stuff or whatever the case may be? You know what I'm saying? Because of the sins of Adam and Eve. There would have been no reason for him to end up flooding the earth because we were headed down that course of punishment regardless. So once again, you got to stop and say, how does this make any sense?
Things like witchcraft, voodoo, giving into all kind of marriages and things that was not of God.
But when you read the laws, it literally says, there shall be no other gods, like worship no other gods. God strictly says not to seek out spiritualists. A lot of them were worshiping the sun and the moon and all of these different things that were not God. They were creating these idols with
Well, worship no other gods. Well, if you stop and think about it, because I'm pretty sure she believes in monotheism, right? The belief in one God. But that's not really what Christianity is. It's really not monotheism. It's worshiping sort of a pantheon of gods, because you have Jehovah, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity, God's head, whatever you want to call them. And I know there's going to be some Christians that may not believe in the Trinity, right? And then you have some that do, right? But the more popular opinion, I would think, is that most people believe in the Trinity. And that's not the belief in just one God. You're believing in multitudes of gods. But then they're going to say, that's God splitting themselves into three. Okay. Then that opens up another host of issues. So when Jesus was saying that only the Father himself knows the time of the end, that's like me knowing that I'm going to terminate this particular podcast in 10 minutes. And then there's part of me saying, only Bob Wire himself knows when his podcast is going to end. How do I not know when the podcast is going to end when I am myself, right? So once again, critical thought kind of goes out the window when it comes to this stuff.
with the wood, like with the carved out wood of like these idols that they would worship and pray to. And God was not having that.
Do y'all not see the problem? These are literally white supremacist talking points. Oh yeah, the white savior. He came and saved all of the black folks uncivilized in the jungle and put them in America. Even though slavery was bad, we saved you from going to hell.
You know what? I bet you there's a lot of Africans that if they hadn't have been brought over, not saying it was right, don't misunderstand, not justifying the slavery in the situation, but God, I still believe, used it. And now I'm sure there's a lot of Africans that got the gospel and they're in heaven right now because they got the gospel. You know, what would be better? For them to have lived their entire life in Africa free, doing their voodoo or whatever, and then dying and going to hell, right? Or what happened?
No, this is something that Antonio does.
Wow, listen to what that idiot pastor literally was saying. He said, better you had come here and been whipped, stripped of your dignity and your morals, you know what I'm saying? Raped, forced to do free labor, to be told you're not equal to the white man and live your life in service to him. And then in the end, accept our belief system of Christianity, and in the after you will receive a reward, right? Rather than live in Africa free and then go to hell. So how does any of that make sense? So if I'm living in Africa free and I'm being a good person, right? Overall, I'm not hurting nobody. I'm more charitable than not. And I'm not in service to this particular belief system. When I die, I see hell. But I'm a slave now that lives in America, and I'm doing other things, raping and hurting other slaves, but I'm doing everything my master wants, you know. But I'm doing foul things, in so many words, and I accept his religion that he gave me, Christianity. So in the end, I'm going to heaven, even though I did all these things that might have been harmful to people that are around me. And you say that's justice? Come on. Really? I mean, folks, we got to do better than this.
pretty often. I've been watching his videos here and there, and anytime that I do watch his videos, he always does this thing where he plays clips and not explain the full context, which then leads his audience to believe that's how the majority of people he's talking about at the time think. Now, clearly, people have differing beliefs or theories as to why slavery even happened or the Atlantic slave trade happened for black people. Talking from a spiritual level, I just told you mine. It's that humans have free will and we can exercise that whenever we want. But let's be clear about something. I don't think any sane individual would actually say, oh yeah, slavery was good. The white man gave us Christianity. Because I can guarantee you that no black person is grateful that white people gave them Christianity. As a matter of fact, it's more like we are grateful that we have the ability to understand the gospel, not see it as foolishness as the rest of the world might. And we
No, you were forced to accept Christianity or you would have been whipped, potentially killed. Like, there was no free will when it came to accepting that, okay? So, I don't know what he's talking about here. There was no choice that you had in the matter when it came to your belief system. You were going to follow what your master, your oppressor, was putting forward as far as in his belief
to
system.
have a relationship with our creator. Notice in that whole sentence, I never said anything about white people at all, because it doesn't have to do with them. Look, it's a known fact that when people are enslaved, certain cultures or practices will become stamped out for the enslavers' cultures or practices. That doesn't inherently mean that the cultures or practices that are being used to replace the others were created for that specific reason.
Society has done an amazing job of demonizing or making anything look bad that's not white or of African descent. Let's take voodoo, for example, like he mentioned. We only hear negative and bad things about it, but guess what? Everything has a good and a bad. Fun fact, Harriet Tubman, although she was a Christian, she was also spiritual. She used spiritual signs, navigating by the stars, using nature like we did back in Africa. And guess what? She saved hundreds of slaves, more than what any Christian God did. And the quote that he said about slavery was better because they're going to have heaven after they die is similar to the propaganda that they're trying to push in kids' TV shows nowadays.
Slavery is as old as time, and it's taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? Before you judge, you must ask yourself, what did the culture and society of the time treat as no big deal?
Freedom.
And this is where the ignorance of the faith starts to show a little bit more with Antonio. And yes, I know you said that he's not a Christian, but if he's going to make a video talking about the black Christian problem, I'd expect him to do some research. And I also want to make it clear, though, when I read these numbers, my goal wasn't to say that what Harriet Tubman did isn't significant and didn't help, or even that she didn't do her best, because those things are all true. But when you look at these numbers, they just don't really compare. When you look up how many slaves did Harriet Tubman free, you get ranges of from 70 people to 300, which is amazing considering Harriet Tubman's age and the fact that she was also narcoleptic. However, in the first book of Numbers, after escaping from Pharaoh's grip, God had Moses take a census of the congregation at the time, which numbered over 600,000, and they were all
Okay, here's where he's in our at. Once again, you can't use the Bible to say, okay, these are the facts here. You know what I'm saying? It said during Exodus, which there's still, scholars are still questioning, did the Exodus ever really happened to begin with, right? So you have to use an outside document to be able to substantiate what the Bible is saying, right? So to make it sound easy, if you're looking to purchase a particular vehicle, right, and you want to know more information about said vehicle as far as in the quality of it and how well it is, you know, and is it true to form, you probably shouldn't go to the manufacturer's website speaking about what they think about their own product, because they're going to enforce their belief in their own product, saying that we have the best product. You have to go to a third-party source that has no affiliation with it, that has no biases or anything included in it, to substantiate what said company may be saying about their particular vehicle, right? So you want a reviewer that has no connection to, you know, this particular product, so to speak, right? So you can't use the Bible to substantiate itself. In other words, probably could have minimized it that way, and I'm sorry for being so wordy. But yeah, if you want to substantiate something, you can't substantiate something with the thing you're trying to substantiate. That just doesn't make sense. Let's continue.
There because God gave Moses the power to part the Red Sea. And you want to know what Harriet Tubman was also known as? The Moses of her people. Now, once again, this isn't to diminish anything that Harriet Tubman did, but when you try to say that she did more than...
She was called the Moses of her people. What, that was a bomb drop or something? All of a sudden what are you trying to suggest there? So what? She could have been called Captain America of her people. Like, that doesn't mean anything, bro. Try again.
God did, no, not at all. I'm pretty sure she would even admit that herself if she were alive.
Yeah, come on now. Listen, I understand your mama was a Christian, your great-grandma was a Christian, her mama was a Christian, but guess what? We not back in slavery no more. We now have the tools and the free will to actually critical think and break down the lies that they told our ancestors. Just think about this. Slaves were not allowed to read during slavery. So why would they give them a Bible to read? They wanted you to stay a slave and stay obedient. So why would anything in that book grant you freedom?
Yeah, so that really doesn't make too much sense either. I kind of like to think of it like this. If I have a gift for you, but someone else is telling you that I don't have a gift for you and that you shouldn't get your hopes up, does that not mean that I still have a gift for you? No, I do still have the gift. It's just that somebody's not allowing you to see it. Much like how slave masters would only allow the reading of slavery-related texts in the Bible without even letting them ever see anything about the Exodus or the 30 other related verses about freedom in the Bible. Keep in mind also that whenever freedom is referenced in the Bible, if it's not talking about the freedom from an oppressor, it's usually talking about spiritual freedom in Christ.
To get back on topic though, man, a lot of these Christians just sound so goddamn delusional.
What were some other things that you saw that you remember?
I saw Biggie in hell.
The name of this video is called I Seen Michael Jackson in Hell. I knew that the Father, Christ, the Son, I knew he brought me.
Don't say I saw Biggie in hell. See how delusional? See how delusional some of these folks are? Wow.
I had a dream that I saw SpongeBob in hell taking orders from demons. Like the demons was telling him what to do on TV, what to put on this, as God is my witness, I am not lying. I have no reason to lie. This would be a stupid lie, okay?
Real Christians know that your identity in Christ,
or a stupid person telling us that this would be a stupid lie,
comes before anything else you identify as. I can't believe that this is even a real topic of conversation.
Why is it always black people when they go to hell? You ain't see Ronald Reagan there? You ain't see no KKK members? I'm seriously starting to think that the Christian God don't like black people, bro. Until the young lady stating that she...
Wow. Yo, he's that's a whole fact, as they would say. You just hearing about all these people of color in hell, and he just pointed out, like, you don't see Ronald Reagan in there? You ain't say they saw Adolf Hitler in there? You know what I'm saying? No Klansmen, no Nazis, none of these people. No Ted Bundy, no serial killers, no nothing. But you see Biggie in hell. And you telling me that there's not something psychologically wrong with these people?
Christian before being black, nonsense. I'm pretty sure one of the first things that she learned was that she's black. And what's the problem with putting your blackness first? Christianity is literally labeled after a white man, and that goes for pretty much every religion. It looks like the race of people worshiping. And to most of these white Christians, they see race. Best believe it.
Okay, that's also just incredibly stupid. I'm really trying not to be disrespectful, but dude, come on. Now, some of the clips that he showed were of people giving their own testimony, right? If you're a Christian, you know what these are, but if you're not, a testimony is essentially you sharing your story about your encounters with the supernatural or the divine. I've heard testimonies of people going to heaven, seeing all the beautiful, vibrant colors, looking on the face of Christ himself, trying to describe his features and anything that he had said to them. But I've also heard of other testimonies where people go to hell. Oftentimes, whenever you hear stuff like that, these are people who are on the wrong path, ex-witches and spellcasters and all that other stuff. And it's typically seen as a wake-up call from God, like, hey, you gotta lock in, brother. You are on the wrong path.
This brother is completely effing lost. This kid is delusional. He's delulu, as they would say.
Let's say this, though. When me and my friend were watching this video before, and the lady with the SpongeBob testimony came out, I didn't have anything for that. I'm not going to lie. It sounded like what she was trying to say was that the demons were kind of trying to control what was on TV through the actions of man, but I mean, she just worded it wrong, I guess. But yeah, people see all types of things in hell. And I'm sure if you go and look at other testimonies of people going to hell, it's not just black people that you see down there. That there are white people there too. Hell wasn't originally made for humans, but it has a whole heck of a lot of them in there. And when it comes to being Christian before being black, your identity in Christ does come before anything. As a Christian, God is the leader of your life. And yeah, so what if you learned that you were black before you even started believing in Christianity? So just how you see it.
Just point out to me where in the scriptures wherever it said that somebody would inhabit hell and be able to leave thereafter. Where? Where in the Bible ever said that? Other than Jesus himself, who went into the bowels of hell and came out and liberated people, such as Moses and so forth. Other than that, where else does it says you're going to visit hell, be able to see it as a scared straight program, so to speak, and then be able to leave and tell people? Come on, man. If you went to hell, that means you ceased living, right? So how are you able to come back and tell us that you were in hell and this is what you saw? Like, that's what I tell you. A lot of times these Christians are some of the most uneducated people when it comes to the Bible. They are some of the most uneducated. That's why if they engage into conversations with people who are agnostics or atheists or whatever the case may be, they typically get their shit handed to them, because those people that are agnostics or whatever the case may be are far more educated when it comes to scripture. And then they get cooked. They get cooked when these people start spouting out particular scriptures that they have no idea that actually even existed. And then they're just fumbling backwards and coming up with all sorts of excuses and so forth. Ridiculous. Much like what this kid is doing.
It's not important for other people to have that belief that they are Christian before being black. For some people, it's not as important that they're black. Rather, it's more important that they are Christian. Having that belief, having that system of faith, it all comes with a part of having an intimate relationship with God. And no, Christian.
The sound of this brother, I can tell he probably don't have a fresh lineup either. I know I have nothing to do with it, but a lot of these raccoons, their lineups is not existent. He sound like he's drunken the Kool-Aid, something crazy. I'm pretty sure he's a MAGA supporting, Republican loving raccoon. I'm sorry to say that, because unfortunately, Christianity in America is about furthering and supporting white supremacy. And I know it's kind of hard for a lot of people to accept it. But in a lot of our homes, when we came up, the pictures of that Jesus was white Jesus in our homes, okay? Because it's a white supremacist religion that's being fed to you. And it's unfortunate. A lot of people might be mad to hear this. They're mad at me too. But it's okay. I'm just going to be out here spouting facts, whether you like it or not. Let's continue.
It wasn't labeled after a white man. I don't even know why you would say that. It literally makes no sense. Jesus was Middle Eastern. He was born in Bethlehem. Just because there's paintings and pictures of a white Jesus doesn't mean that he was white. There's paintings and pictures of a black Jesus. That doesn't mean that he was black. Heck, there's even pictures out there of an Asian Jesus. And so technically you're...
But which one is more predominantly widely accepted? I asked you that. We know which one it is. So yeah, there is a purpose behind the way they painted Jesus as being this white man with long hair and blue eyes, and with a tight goatee. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason for it. They understand the art of warfare when it comes to presenting an image to make people believe that this particular person is the superior race, so to speak, because he's your savior. So painting Jesus as white would make a person of color, unbeknownst to themselves, that the superior race is a white race. Like, you could try to pretend like that's not a thing, but it is. And just because you want to pretend it's not true doesn't all of a sudden make it not true. Stop the cap.
Right.
Let's
about
continue.
one thing is that the religion usually looks like the people that worship it. And so because we have so many skin colors of Jesus or depictions of Jesus, you kind of just disproved your own point. People from all over the world worship Jesus, and most of them aren't even in America. So no, Christianity isn't a white man's religion, and it's also not labeled after a white man.
These white Christians, they see race. Best believe that.
Let's say that somebody was coming into our church and they're black, and would they be eligible for membership in our church? Yes, of course they would. They'd be eligible for membership in our church. But would they be permitted to participate in, embody, and practice what I would call black culture generally in our church? The answer is absolutely not. Why? Because the characteristics that mark black culture as a generalization, in the same way Paul's talking about Cretans on Crete, they are evil, murderous, violent, bestial people. They steal, they kill, they destroy. They are sinful to the core. They have besetting sins that are like fatherlessness, sexual immorality. They molest children at a high rate. All of any criminal statistic that you could look at, almost pretty much without exception.
Talk about projection.
Yeah, I would hope that somebody's able to see race, because if they couldn't, then something's wrong with their eyes. The problem with him using this clip in specific.
Why don't you talk about what old boy said? And maybe I jumped the gun, and he's about to, but I got a funny, sneaky feeling that he's going to sidestep all that stuff that was literally said, and how most of these white evangelical Christians feel. That is. They looked, and a lot of them said that black folks were descendants of Ham, who's been cursed, and were being told that they were going to be made servants, and that's why that justified slavery in America. So let's see how you sidestep that, brother.
That he's using it to try and show you that most white Christians are as obsessed about race as he is in this video, or as he is in all of his other videos, which not only isn't true, but even if before making this video you were to have spoken to an actual experienced Christian who's interacted with different Christians of different races, they would also tell you that it's not true. Now, the guy in the clip talking about black culture and the black culture tendencies that wouldn't be welcomed in his church, and him saying that Paul was saying the same things about Cretans and Crete, completely untrue. The only thing that Paul even referenced was the fact that a citizen of Crete called his own people liars. He didn't add on any of this extra stuff that this guy in the clip was talking about. And what the guy is doing in this clip is conflating the crime that happens with black people to black culture. In my mind, I feel like there's a divide in the black community, because there's people that engage in criminal behavior and regular people who happen to be black. And this is the case for literally all races. Every race has its good and its bad, but crime isn't allowed in church. However, if you are a criminal, even criminals are welcomed in church, because then they would have the opportunity to have their heart changed by the Lord. All types of sinners and people who are lost are welcomed into church as well for the same reason.
I didn't even want to make this that type of video, but white people throughout history have been some of the most demonic and evil people to ever touch earth. Every place they went to and conquered, they killed all the people, the women, killed the kids, gave people diseases. I mean, it goes on and on. I'm gonna kick it off with this. White men make up 31% of the US population, but they make up 71% of the people caught with child you-know-what. And take a look on the screen right here. All of these people committed some of the most heinous acts in just this month alone. It's not even all of them, but guess what? I'm gonna just roll the footage.
A Webster County man has been sentenced to federal prison. Officials at the Kentucky Attorney General's office say 26-year-old Michael Puckett was sentenced to 30 years after pleading guilty to rape, assault, and criminal abuse of a child. Officials say his victim was a 6-month-old baby who had to be flown to the hospital.
The Department of Homeland Security has announced charges that Charleston County Magistrate Judge James B. Gosnell Jr. is facing. They say Gosnell has been arrested for possessing child sexual abuse materials. Department of Homeland Security investigators reportedly got a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
It's been a heartbreaking scene here in Rowan County as we've learned more information on a double homicide that claimed the lives of a mother and a daughter. Police say the Rowan County Sheriff's Office was called to a home just after 10 in the morning for a wellness check. That's where they found the victims.
We begin at 10 with that tragedy in York County, PA, one of the deadliest days for Pennsylvania law enforcement this century. 3 members of law enforcement are dead, 2 more seriously injured.
And we're learning Ruth attended high school in York County. This is his yearbook picture from the 2020 Southwestern High School yearbook.
Tonight, we're learning more about the man who opened fire at a Dallas ICE field office, shooting 3 detainees. 1 died, 2 others were critically hurt. FBI Director Kash Patel detailed some of the investigation into 29-year-old John.
Buddy, doesn't that seem a little bit racist to you now? Like you saying that white people are the most evil people to touch Earth? I guarantee you that every single clip that you showed right there, I could do the same exact thing for black people times 2. I don't exactly.
Wow, did you hear what he just said? He said, I'm pretty sure I could do that times 2. Because in his sick mind, this guy Ashburn, he believes that black folks are just criminally predisposed to crime, to criminality, and that we commit the most crimes. And he's unfortunately taught that is through his faith. White supremacy is perpetrated throughout Christianity in this country. It's a fact. And it's affected his brain. You could show him all these things of what white folks have done, because everything Antonio said in that video was of truth. He didn't go out his way and try to say all white people are this way or not. But unfortunately, the media tries to project us that way. And he just turned the mirror around and said, no, look at all of these atrocities that white folks do, that they're not being publicized about so much. But let those particular things have taken place with a black face or brown face on that, and they've been all over the news. A lot of those situations that took place, I didn't even hear about it, let's be honest. But this young cat right here, Abstern, is trying to create straw man arguments, sidestepping. You failed, son. You failed miserably. You could not stand in front of Antonio in any kind of debate. He will eat you alive, because you're coming from a space of emotions and things that you were told, these traditional ideas and values, and Antonio's going to hit you just with purely the facts. So at the end of the day, when you want to make the choice on where you should go, don't ever argue facts or debate facts. There's no need for that. Everything else around the facts is subjective, and it could be discussed and spoken about and digested in any way that either party wants to walk away feeling. But the facts has to be the common denominator that is not changed or moved or anything like that. But a lot of times you try to shift the Overton window when it comes to factual things and make it seems like more diluted and change what the facts is really saying, rather than saying, this is just the facts. It says the sky is blue, and I'm not going to sit there and start saying that the sky is pink, okay? And that's what people like this cat is trying to do. Let's finish up.
I remember what video it was, but I remember Antonio saying that the reason why he created this channel, or one of the reasons why, was to kind of fight back against the white fatigue comments. I'm sure you've seen them across social media. Whenever there's a clip of a black person acting out of control, you can see them in the comments, black fatigue, or the usual suspects, or something like that. These type of comments have been on the rise ever since the Austin Metcalf situation. But here's the thing with making a channel like that. You giving into trolls on social media talking about black fatigue, and doing the exact same thing that they're doing to you or to black people isn't solving anything. In fact, it's just contributing to more division, which in turn doesn't help black people. So if you're so pro-black, why do something like this?
It'll be about 3 hours long. But to get back on track, man, I need all of my black people to get out of this religion.
You see, now what did he offer there as another way of fighting back? What did he offer? He just said that people are coming out and saying things about black fatigue, which they hijacked the term black fatigue, because originally black fatigue was about black folks just tired of the constant oppression that they deal with on a daily in this country. And white people came and hijacked it the way they hijacked it, woke and bastardized it and turned it into something other than the true meaning. They did the same thing with black fatigue, and then you have white folks putting out videos called Black Fatigue, where they're saying that black folks are doing all these horrendous things and it's affecting them. When in all due seriousness, whatever may be going on, quote unquote, in these black neighborhoods where certain black folks may be hurting black folks has no bearings on you. You're not being hurt. So why are you so concerned about it? So right there, that's complete bullshit. You're not being affected by Jerome and Jaheim shooting and killing each other. How is that hurting you? It doesn't. You know, let's be honest. And I don't want to spin the narrative and make it just seem like that's something that's just adversely affecting the black neighborhood, because over 80% of the crimes that take place against white people are from white people. So when they like to say black on black crime, I mean, then you want to say there's white on white crime as well? Because the majority of crimes that are happening to white people are done by other white people, and vice versa. Because the crime doesn't have a color. People typically commit crimes against people that lives within their vicinity. Okay, so that's all that is. That's why black on black crime is a made up bullshit talking point that's just only used to try to suggest black folks are inherently evil and inherently are predisposed to criminality. And that's why you should reject those talking points.
Just psychosis. And in my opinion, we need to be showing more love to our ancestors, because they really was the ones that fought for our freedom. Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, Gabriel Prosser, Mark Vesey. These are people that we know are real and actually helped us. And I just feel like Christianity, especially in the black community, is always used as a clutch. Whenever something bad happens, it's because of the devil. And then when something good happens, it's because of God. Like, no. We all know that auntie that have all of these health problems. She's 300 pounds, diabetes, high blood pressure, and she blaming on the devil. No, put the bullshit food down and have some discipline. And then on the other hand, say you do something good, you get a job promotion. It's thank God he did it for me.
I could speak to that, definitely. When I was sitting there 300 plus pounds and health-wise not doing exceptionally well, I could have been like, oh man, you know, Satan is busy. Now all of a sudden I'm type 2 diabetic, cholesterol level through the roof, at risk of shortening my life, heart attacks, whatever, and just say, oh, Satan is busy. No, it was me being busy, me being undisciplined and not eating correctly and not putting the right things inside my own body, right? So whenever things that are bad happening to us, we always want, because listen, we're great apes, you know? Just look it up. Human beings are great apes. And we have ape-like minds. And we want to be able to put blame on something, so we create mythical things to explain things that we can't understand or perceive. That's pretty much it in a nutshell with the situation. The video was pretty much over. I'm sorry. Yeah, so this cat Antonio Speaks. I'm gonna go to watch his video in its entirety and everything what he had to say. I just kind of wanted to do a reaction to the reaction. I hope you guys were able to stick it out. I know we're coming around like the 52, 53 minute mark. Long video, but thank you for chilling with me. And just ultimately, listen, I feel like this way in a nutshell. Whatever religion you choose to practice, more power to you. That's fine, right? If you choose not to participate in any religion, that's fine too. More power to you. What things that matters the most is in how we treat those around us, okay? How do we treat our neighbors? Do we treat them with a level of dignity and respect, regardless of the fact that maybe, you know, they follow the same traditions that we follow, if they're the same ethnicity as we are, if they're the same religious belief as we are? Like, we shouldn't judge and get so tribal and say that I'm only down with people that are down with my beliefs and stuff like that. Things that are not, you're not able to point to and prove and say that that's a fact. Because at the end of the day, no religion is a fact, because every religion requires faith. And if you look up faith is to believe in something that you cannot necessarily prove. And if something is a fact, it requires no faith, right? So that's why our religious beliefs, our spiritualness, and all that stuff is subjective, all right? Just treat each other well. And that's my 2 cents. Okay? Peace. Thank you.